The first gunshot echoed through Westfield Mall like a slammed door. People stopped mid-stride, heads turning toward the sound that didn't belong. Somewhere near the food court, a baby started crying. The second shot came faster, closer, and the crowd fractured into chaos. Marcus Cole had been holding a pair of clearance jeans when the first shot rang out. Instinct kicked in before thought could interfere. His eyes swept the concourse in under 2 seconds, exits blocked by panicked shoppers' security guard frozen near the escalator. Gunmen in black hoodie moving with purpose through the scattering masses. And then he saw her. A little girl in a yellow dress stood motionless near the fountain pink ice cream cone dripping onto white sneakers. She couldn't have been more than 7, blonde hair and pigtails, mouth open in confusion rather than fear. She didn't understand yet. The man in the hoodie was 30 feet away and closing fast. Marcus dropped the jeans and moved. His body remembered what his mind had spent 3 years trying to forget. The angles, the distances, the split-second calculation of threat versus cover. He cleared the gap in 4 strides, vision tunneling, to exclude everything except the child and the approaching danger. 20 feet. 15. The hoodie's hand came up, something dark gripped in his fist. Marcus hit the girl with his shoulder, wrapping her small frame against his chest as momentum carried them both toward the tile floor. The ice cream exploded in a splash of pink across white marble. The third gunshot was deafening this close, and Marcus felt the impact punch through his right shoulder like a hot spike driven deep into muscle and bone. He rolled, keeping the child tucked beneath him, his back to the shooter. The pain was white-hot and spreading fast, but his arms stayed locked around her trembling body. She was shaking, but not screaming. Safe. Unhurt. The gunman's footsteps retreated at a run. Mall security finally found their courage and gave chase, shouting into radios. Marcus loosened his grip just enough to check the girl's face. Wide brown eyes stared up at him, shock beginning to give way to comprehension. His voice came out rougher than he intended. "You okay, kid?" She nodded, tears starting to track down her cheeks. The woman arrived like a storm. High heels clicking rapid fire across tile business suit, dark hair pulled back tight. She dropped to her knees beside them, hands already reaching for the child. "Nora. Oh my God, Nora." The girl dissolved into her mother's arms, finally crying in earnest. The woman held her daughter tight, checking for injuries with frantic efficiency. And then her eyes found Marcus. They were gray-sharp and currently filled with something between terror and calculation. Not gratitude, assessment. Marcus pushed himself to sitting, biting back a grunt as his shoulder screamed protest. Blood was soaking through his flannel shirt, now warm and sticky against his skin. The woman's gaze tracked to the wound, then back to his face. "You're hurt." It wasn't a question or an offer of help, just a statement of fact delivered in a voice that suggested she was already 3 steps ahead of this conversation. "I'm fine." EMTs were pushing through the crowd now, security forming a perimeter, police radios crackling with urgent chatter. The woman stood smoothly, lifting her daughter with her, and Marcus caught the full measure of her in that moment. Mid-30s, expensive clothes that screamed executive rather than suburban mom, and eyes that missed nothing. She was still looking at him like a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. The paramedics descended with practiced urgency. One of them, a young guy with kind eyes and quick hands, cut away Marcus's shirt while asking questions about pain levels and allergies. Marcus answered mechanically, watching the woman and child being escorted away by mall security. The mother glanced back once briefly, and their eyes met across the chaos. Recognition without understanding. "Sir, we need to get you to the hospital." Marcus shook his head, the movement sending fresh pain radiating down his arm. "No hospital. I'm fine." "You've been shot. You need proper medical care, imaging, probably surgery. I'll be fine. Just bandage it." The EMT opened his mouth to argue, but something in Marcus's expression made him reconsider. They compromised with heavy gauze and a sling, the paramedic writing out a prescription, that Marcus knew he wouldn't fill. Couldn't afford to fill. A police officer materialized beside the ambulance clipboard in hand expression flat. "Need a statement." Marcus gave him the basics. Walking by, saw the kid, moved without thinking. No, didn't get a good look at the shooter, just happened to be there. The cop barely looked up from his notes pen, scratching across paper with bureaucratic efficiency. When he finished, he didn't thank Marcus. Didn't even meet his eyes. Just nodded once and moved on to the next witness. Marcus sat in the back of the ambulance for another 10 minutes, watching the controlled chaos of a crime scene taking shape. Yellow tape evidence markers, detective types in suits conferring near the fountain where pink ice cream still stained white tile. No sign of the woman or her daughter. They'd probably been whisked away to safety to some secure location where people like her went when danger touched their carefully managed lives. His phone buzzed. Text from his sister in Ohio. "Saw you on the news. You okay?" He didn't answer. The news. Of course, they were already broadcasting it. Mall shooting, hero bystander, human interest angle to balance the violence. His stomach turned. The EMT helped him down from the ambulance. "Change your mind about the hospital, you call 911 immediately. Understand gunshot wounds can be unpredictable." Marcus nodded, already walking toward the parking structure. His truck was 3 levels up, and each step sent jolts of pain through his shoulder, but he kept moving. Movement meant purpose. Purpose meant he didn't have to think about how close that bullet had come to finding something vital. The drive home was a blur of traffic lights and radio news updates. Sources confirm the young girl has been identified as Nora Sterling, daughter of tech CEO Elena Sterling, head of Apex Innovations. The girl's mother declined to comment, but witnesses report she was visibly shaken by the incident. The suspect remains at large. Marcus switched off the radio. His apartment building was exactly what you'd expect from a warehouse worker's salary. 2-bedroom unit on the 3rd floor stairs that creaked neighbors he'd learned to tune out. Home, if you could call it the place where he and Declan had built a life from the ruins of their old one. The door swung open before he could get his key in the lock. Declan stood there, 8 years old and trying hard to look brave, but his eyes were red. "Dad, I saw you on TV." Marcus forced a smile, ruffling his son's dark hair with his good hand. "Just a scratch, buddy. I'm okay." Declan's eyes went to the makeshift sling, the blood-stained shirt visible beneath Marcus's jacket. "That's not a scratch." "Well, maybe a little more than a scratch, but nothing I can't handle." His sister appeared from the kitchen, phone in hand, worry written across her face. Lisa had driven 2 hours the moment she saw the news taken Declan out of school without asking permission first. That was Lisa. Family first, questions later. "You need a doctor." "I saw a paramedic." "A real doctor, Marcus. In a real hospital." "Can't afford it." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with the math they both knew by heart. No insurance. Rent due in 2 weeks. Declan needed new winter boots. The warehouse job barely covered basics, and medical bills would sink them. Lisa's jaw tightened, but she knew better than to push. Instead, she moved to the kitchen, started making coffee, giving him space to breathe. Declan hadn't moved from the doorway. "You saved that girl." "I was in the right place at the right time." "Like a superhero." Marcus knelt down, ignoring the protest from his shoulder, meeting his son's eyes. "Not a superhero. Just a dad who saw a kid in trouble. That's all." Declan's arms wrapped around his neck, careful of the injury, and Marcus held his son close. This was why he'd walked away from the life that had turned him into a weapon. This was why he spent his nights stacking boxes in a warehouse instead of providing overwatch in some desert hellhole halfway around the world. Because Declan needed a father, not a ghost. Later, after Lisa left and Declan finally went to bed, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water he wasn't drinking. The TV was on low in the corner, local news cycling through the story on endless repeat. His face filled the screen, grainy security footage showing the moment he'd shielded the girl. The caption read, Hayes 34 warehouse worker. They'd spelled his last name wrong. Not that it mattered. The phone rang just after 11. Unknown number. Marcus almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up on the fourth ring. Mr. Cole. The voice was female, crisp, professional. The kind of voice that expected to be obeyed. Who's asking? My name is Jennifer Bradford. I'm executive assistant to Elena Sterling, CEO of Apex Innovations. Mrs. Sterling would like to speak with you in person, tomorrow afternoon at our headquarters, if that's convenient. What's this about, Mrs.? Sterling will explain everything when you meet. Shall we say 2 o'clock? Marcus should have said no. Should have recognized the warning signs, the invisible lines being drawn between his world and theirs. But rent was due in 2 weeks, and Declan needed boots, and maybe, just maybe, there was a reward attached to saving the daughter of a tech billionaire. I'll be there. Jennifer Bradford gave him the address and ended the call without goodbye. Marcus sat in the dark apartment, shoulder throbbing in time with his pulse, and wondered what he'd just agreed to. The nightmare came around 3 a.m. Same one it always was. Kandahar rooftop rifle scope filled with a target that kept shifting between enemy combatant and civilian. Kareem's voice in his ear, steady and sure, calling wind speed and distance. The shot. The second IED they hadn't seen. Kareem's body torn and bleeding eyes still open, but already gone. Marcus jerked awake, heart-hammering sheets, soaked with sweat. The apartment was quiet. Declan's soft breathing came from the room down the hall. Safe. Alive. He didn't try to sleep again. Morning brought the kind of chaos only an 8-year-old could create. Declan needed breakfast, couldn't find his homework, had 17 questions about what happened at the mall. Marcus moved through the routine on autopilot, making oatmeal, one-handed signing permission slips, answering questions with enough truth to satisfy without revealing the violence underneath. The warehouse called at 9. Carl, his supervisor voice carefully neutral. Marcus, how you doing? I'm fine. Listen, corporate's been asking questions. About the incident. They're concerned about publicity, about association with the company. Might be best if you took a few days off. Translation. You're radioactive. We can't have the news cameras showing up here. Disappear until the story dies. How many days? Let's say through the weekend. Paid, of course. Of course. Paid leave that would show up as half his normal hours because warehouse workers didn't get real benefits. Marcus did the math automatically. Could cover food, maybe. Not rent, not boots. Understood. He ended the call and stared at the phone. 2 o'clock appointment at Apex Innovations. Maybe that conversation would go differently than the one with Carl. Maybe someone actually wanted to say thank you instead of stay away. Maybe he was an idiot for hoping. Apex Innovations occupied floors 20 through 32 of a glass tower downtown that probably cost more than Marcus would earn in his entire lifetime. The lobby was all marble and chrome, with a receptionist who looked at his worn jeans and flannel shirt like he'd tracked mud across her pristine floor. I have an appointment. Marcus Cole, 2 o'clock with Elena Sterling. Her expression shifted from dismissive to cautiously neutral. A few keystrokes, a quiet phone call, and suddenly a security escort materialized to guide him to the elevators. The ride up was silent. The guard positioned between Marcus and the control panel as if expecting him to make a run for it. They exited on 28, executive floor. Everything here screamed money and power, original art on the walls, conference rooms with floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of quiet that came from thick carpet and thicker doors. Jennifer Bradford met them halfway down the corridor. She was younger than he'd expected from the voice, early 30s, dark suit, tablet in hand like an extension of her arm. Mr. Cole, thank you for coming. This way, please. She led him to a small conference room and gestured to a chair. Marcus sat noting the layout automatically. One door windows overlooking the city, cameras in the corners. The guard had disappeared, but he doubted he was far. Mrs. Sterling will be with you shortly. Can I get you anything? Water, coffee? I'm fine. Jennifer nodded and left heels clicking a precise rhythm against tile. Marcus waited, trying to ignore the way his shoulder throbbed despite the painkillers he'd taken. The door opened 10 minutes later. Elena Sterling entered first, and Marcus recognized her immediately despite the different clothes. Yesterday she'd been frantic, terrified, checking her daughter for injuries in the wreckage of a mall shooting. Today, she was armor-plated in a navy suit, hair perfect, expression controlled. The CEO. Behind her came an older man, silver hair, expensive watch, the kind of confident posture that came from decades of authority. And bringing up the rear, a thick-set guy in his 50s with cop eyes and a security badge. Elena took the seat at the head of the table. The others flanked her. Mr. Cole, I'm Elena Sterling. This is Wallace Pierce, chairman of our board, and Frank Romano, head of security. Marcus nodded. No one offered to shake hands. Elena's gray eyes studied him with the same intensity as yesterday. But now, the terror was gone. What remained was calculation. I want to start by saying thank you for what you did. For Nora, I owe you an enormous debt. The words were right, but something in her delivery made them feel rehearsed. Marcus waited. Frank Romano leaned forward, sliding a document across the table. We'd like you to sign this. Standard non-disclosure agreement. You don't discuss the incident with the media. We make sure your medical expenses are covered. Marcus picked up the paper but didn't read it. His eyes stayed on Frank. So you want me to sign away my right to talk about saving your boss's daughter? It's about privacy, about controlling the narrative. It's about control, period. Wallace Pierce spoke for the first time, voice deep and measured. Mr. Cole, your military record is mostly classified. Your current employment is warehouse work. Forgive me, but nothing in your background suggests expertise in corporate security or crisis management. We need to ensure that yesterday 3 men photographed this building's service entrances during lunch rush. The room went silent. Marcus continued, voice level. 2 of them carried military-grade communications gear. One had a concealed weapon shoulder holster right side. They were mapping your security response patterns, timing your guard rotations, identifying blind spots in your camera coverage. Frank Romano's expression didn't change, but something tightened around his eyes. He pulled out his phone, typed quickly, waited. His face went pale. He's right. We have them on camera. Exactly as described. Elena's posture shifted fractionally, leaning forward. How did you spot them? I notice what doesn't fit. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Wallace Pierce was studying him with new interest, now the dismissive tone gone. What branch of service? Marines. What unit? Marcus met his eyes and said nothing. Some questions didn't get answered in conference rooms with civilians. Wallace seemed to understand that. He nodded slowly. Elena stood moving to the window. She looked out at the city for a long moment before turning back. Mr. Romano, that will be all. Mr. Pierce, thank you for your time. It was a dismissal, politely phrased but absolute. The 2 men exchanged glances but didn't argue. They left Frank taking the NDA with him. When they were alone, Elena sat down again, this time in the chair next to Marcus, rather than at the head of the table. Tell me the truth. What did you see in those men yesterday? Professionals. Former military or law enforcement hired for surveillance. Argent Strategic Services would be my guess based on their equipment and discipline. You got all that from security footage. I got that from 15 years of knowing what a threat looks like. Elena absorbed this, her expression unreadable. My head of security missed them entirely. He was looking for protesters. They were counting on that. But you weren't. I look for what's wrong, not what I expect to see. She smiled, then small and without warmth. You know what I think, Mr. Cole. I think you're not a warehouse worker at all. I think you're a highly trained operative who's pretending to be invisible. The question is why? Marcus considered lying, considered walking away. Instead, he gave her a piece of truth. I had a life that required those skills. I left it. Now I work in a warehouse and raise my son and try to be the kind of man he deserves. That's all. That's not all. Someone with your training doesn't just stop being useful. Being useful got people killed. The words came out harder than he intended. Elena didn't flinch. I need someone who sees threats before they materialize. Someone who doesn't miss what everyone else does. My security team just proved they can't do that. I'm not interested. I haven't made an offer yet. Don't. Marcus stood shoulder protesting the movement. Elena rose with him. At least tell me why you did it. Yesterday. You didn't know who Nora was, who I was. You just moved. Why? Because she was a kid in danger and I could help. Most people freeze. I'm not most people. Elena studied him for another long moment, then nodded. Thank you, Mr. Cole. For Nora. For everything. She extended her hand. Marcus shook it, noting the firm grip, the calluses that suggested she didn't spend all her time behind a desk. When he turned to leave, her voice stopped him at the door. Think about it. The offer. I'll have Jennifer send you the details. Marcus didn't turn around. Save your time. He made it halfway to the elevator before his phone rang. Unknown number again. Against his better judgment, he answered. Cole. Mr. Cole, this is Principal Anderson at Riverside Elementary. I'm calling about Declan. Ice flooded his veins. What happened? Is he hurt? He's fine, but we had an incident. Someone attempted to pick him up from school claiming to be his uncle. When we asked for identification, they became agitated and left. We've gone into soft lockdown as a precaution. Marcus was already running for the stairs elevator, too slow. I'm on my way. Don't let him go with anyone but me. Of course not. Mr. Cole, do you have any family members we should be aware of? Anyone who might have legitimate reason. No family, nobody. If someone tries again, call the police immediately. He burst through the stairwell door on the ground floor, sprinting across the lobby. The security guard shouted something, but Marcus was already gone, hitting the parking garage at a dead run, despite the screaming pain in his shoulder. His phone rang again before he reached his truck. Elena Sterling's number this time, though he hadn't given it to her. Mr. Cole, I just got a call from Jennifer. Someone tried to take my daughter from school today. They knew her classroom, her teacher's name. Is your son? Yeah, just got the call. Silence on the line. Then quietly, this isn't random, is it? No. Come back to Apex. Bring Declan. We need to talk. Really talk. Marcus was already turning the truck around, tires squealing against concrete. I'll get him first. Be there in an hour. Riverside Elementary was in controlled chaos when Marcus arrived. Police cruisers out front, teachers shepherding classes inside, parents clustered near the main office demanding answers. Marcus pushed through to the principal's office, where Declan sat in a chair too big for him, looking small and scared. Dad? Marcus knelt down, checking his son over automatically, despite knowing he was fine. You okay, buddy? There was a stranger. Mrs. Anderson said he tried to take me, but I didn't go with him because you always say never go with strangers. That's right. You did exactly right. The principal provided what details she had. Male, mid-30s, professional appearance, claimed to be Marcus's brother. Had a plausible story about a family emergency. But when pressed for ID, he'd left quickly. Security footage showed a man in business casual ball cap sunglasses. Nothing distinctive. Nothing helpful. Marcus signed Declan out and carried him to the truck, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. His son's arms wrapped around his neck, holding tight. Are the bad guys trying to get me? Nobody's going to get you. I promise. You got hurt saving that girl. What if they hurt you more? Marcus pulled back enough to meet his son's eyes. Deck, listen to me. I will always, always keep you safe, no matter what. Understand? Declan nodded, but his grip didn't loosen. The drive to Apex took 40 minutes. Declan was quiet, staring out the window, processing. Marcus had learned to recognize the signs. His son was like him that way. Took things in, turned them over in his mind, built understanding from pieces. Is that girl okay? The one you saved? Yeah, she's fine. Are we going to see her? Maybe. What's her name? Nora. Declan considered this. That's a nice name, like in Peter Pan. Marcus almost smiled. Leave it to an 8-year-old to make that connection. Jennifer Bradford met them in the lobby this time, expression tight with controlled urgency. Mr. Cole, Mrs. Sterling is waiting. Conference room 12. She noticed Declan and her expression softened fractionally. Is this your son? Yeah. Declan, say hi to Ms. Bradford. Hi. Hello, Declan. I have something I think you might like. Do you like dinosaurs? Declan perked up immediately. I love dinosaurs. I'm doing my science project on how dinosaurs evolved into birds. Jennifer smiled genuine this time and led them to a different conference room than before. This one was clearly set up for kids. Small table in the corner with paper and crayons, a few educational toys, books. Nora uses this room sometimes when she has to come to work with Mom. Feel free to make yourself comfortable while your dad talks with Mrs. Sterling. Elena was waiting in an adjacent office visible through an interior window. She saw them arrive and came out immediately. Her eyes went to Declan, first assessing, then to Marcus. Thank you for coming. Both of you. Nora appeared from somewhere behind her mother, quieter than yesterday, clutching a stuffed bunny. She saw Declan and went still, recognition flickering across her face. You're the man's son, from the mall. Declan looked at his father, unsure. Marcus nodded. Yeah, your mom wanted us to come by. Nora stepped forward, brave now in her own territory. Want to see my volcano project? It's for science class. Declan glanced at Marcus again, who gave him a small smile. Go ahead, buddy. I'll be right here. The kids disappeared into the conference room, Nora already talking a mile a minute about baking soda and vinegar ratios. Elena watched them go, something vulnerable crossing her face before the CEO mask returned. Let's talk in my office. Elena's office was corner space, floor-to-ceiling windows on two sides, the kind of view that reminded you of your place in the world's hierarchy. She gestured to a chair but remained standing herself, arms crossed. Someone just tried to kidnap our children. Looks that way. And you think it's connected to the mall shooting. Don't you? Elena moved to the window, looking out at the city. I've spent the last 3 hours on the phone with FBI, local police, private security consultants. They all say the same thing. High-profile CEO, wealthy family were natural targets. Could be ransom, corporate espionage, someone with a grudge. But you don't believe that. She turned to face him. The man at the mall wasn't after ransom. He was after Nora specifically. And the surveillance team you spotted, the attempted school pickup, this is coordinated, professional, someone with resources and patience. Marcus said nothing, waiting. I need help, real help. Not Frank Romano's security theater, not corporate consultants who bill by the hour and deliver nothing. I need someone who sees what's actually happening. You need a bodyguard. I need more than that. I need someone who can think like whoever's targeting us. Someone who can stop this before it escalates. I'm not that person anymore. You took a bullet for my daughter without hesitation. You spotted a surveillance team my entire security department missed. You are exactly that person. Marcus shook his head. I work in a warehouse. I pick up my kid from school at 3. I make dinner at 6 and help with homework at 7. That's my life now. And how long before that life gets Declan killed? The words hit like a punch. Marcus's hands clenched involuntarily. Elena's expression softened, but only slightly. I'm sorry. That was harsh, but it's true. Whoever's doing this knows about Declan now. They tried to take him today. What happens tomorrow? What happens when you're at the warehouse and he's at school and they come back with a better plan? I'll figure it out. How? By running. By hiding. These aren't random criminals, Marcus. They're professionals with funding and planning. You can't warehouse worker your way out of this. Marcus stood moving to the window beside her. Down below, the city moved in its endless rhythm. People going about their lives unaware, safe in their ignorance. What are you offering? Security consultant position. 3 times your warehouse salary. Full benefits including health insurance that covers you and Declan. Flexible hours built around his schedule. You pick him up at 3, dinner at 6, homework at 7. I work around your life, not the other way around. And in exchange, you keep my daughter safe. You find whoever's behind this. You teach my people how to actually do their jobs. Your board will never approve it. I have no credentials, no corporate experience. The board works for me, not the other way around. And you have something worth more than credentials. You have instinct. Marcus studied her reflection in the glass. CEO armor firmly in place, but underneath, he could see the mother. The woman who'd dropped to her knees on blood-stained mall tile and held her daughter like the world was ending. I need to think about it. Someone tried to kidnap our children today, Marcus. How much time do you think we have? Before he could answer, his phone rang. Warehouse number. He answered, already knowing what was coming. Cole. Marcus, it's Carl. Listen. Corporates made a decision. Given the publicity, the safety concerns, they think it's best if we part ways. You'll get 2 weeks severance paid out by the end of the month. I'm sorry, man. It's not personal. It was always personal. Marcus ended the call without responding. Elena was watching him. Bad news. I just got fired. Because of yesterday. Because I made the news. Because I'm a liability. She didn't smile, but something shifted in her expression. Recognition. Funny how that works. You save a life and suddenly you're too dangerous to keep around. Yeah. Hilarious. Silence stretched between them. Through the interior window they could see Declan and Nora bent over construction paper, drawing something together. Nora was talking animated, and Declan was actually smiling. Marcus made the calculation he'd been avoiding. Rent due in 2 weeks. No job. No insurance. Someone actively targeting his son. And across from him, a woman offering exactly what he needed. Exactly when he needed it. Coincidence or trap? I have conditions. Elena turned from the window, full attention on him now. Name them. Declan comes first. Always. Anytime, any situation. If there's a conflict between your work and his safety, his needs win. Agreed. I work alone. I don't answer to Frank Romano or your board or anyone except you. If they can't handle that, this conversation ends now. They'll handle it. And I need to know what we're really dealing with. Who would target you this specifically? Who has the resources and motivation to coordinate something this elaborate? Elena's jaw tightened. I have suspicions, but I need to confirm them first. Not good enough. You want me protecting your daughter, you tell me everything. She held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. His name is David Cross. We co-founded a startup 8 years ago. When we got acquisition offers, I wanted to stay independent. He wanted to sell. Things got ugly. He sued me, claimed I stole his algorithms. Lost when the court saw evidence of collaborative work. He left bitter, swore he'd destroy me. And you think he's behind this? This morning, Jennifer traced the payment for that surveillance team. 3 shell companies deep, but it tracks back to North Point Technologies. David's company. Marcus processed this. Corporate espionage, I understand. But targeting children, that's different. David doesn't see it that way. For him, business and personal are the same thing. I rejected his partnership. I rejected his vision. And 8 years ago, I rejected something else. He wanted more than a business relationship. He proposed. Night before our company's first major investor meeting. Said we'd change the world together in every sense. I said no. And he took it as betrayal. He took it as theft. In his mind, I stole the company, the algorithms, the future we were supposed to have. Everything since then has been about making me pay. Through the window, Nora was showing Declan her volcano model. The kids were laughing now, easy and natural, safe in this moment, unaware of the threat circling. Marcus thought about his son, about 3 years of trying to build a life that didn't require the skills the Marines had burned into him, about the promise he'd made to Maria as she lay dying. Keep our boy safe. Give him normal. Nothing about this was normal. But normal hadn't kept Declan safe today. Normal couldn't stop men with resources and plans. Normal was a luxury he couldn't afford anymore. I start Monday. Elena's shoulders relaxed fractionally. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If David Cross is willing to target children, this is going to get ugly before it gets better. I know. And when it does, when the gloves come off and the real work starts, you might not like the methods required. I hired you for your instincts and your training. I'm not going to second-guess how you do the job. Marcus moved toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. Keep Declan and Nora together for now. They're safer as a unit, easier to protect, and they seem to like each other. Elena smiled, small but genuine. They do. Nora hasn't warmed to anyone this fast since... She stopped, but Marcus understood. Since her father left. Since Elena became a single mother navigating corporate warfare and parenthood alone. They weren't so different, he and this CEO, both fighting to protect their children, both carrying wounds that didn't show. I'll have Jennifer drop the paperwork. Start date Monday, but come by tomorrow if you can. I want you to meet the full security team, review our current protocols. Tomorrow's Saturday, family day. Bring Declan. Bring him every day if needed. That was the deal. Marcus nodded and went to collect his son. Declan was reluctant to leave, already making plans with Nora about showing each other their science projects. The drive home was quiet. Declan fell asleep in the passenger seat, exhausted from the day's stress. Marcus drove on autopilot, mind churning through scenarios and contingencies. His phone buzzed at a red light. Text from an unknown number. Mr. Cole. Message from our client. Stand down. Take a vacation. This isn't your fight. Don't make your son pay for your choices. Marcus deleted the message but memorized the number. He'd trace it later, though he already knew it would lead nowhere useful. The threat was clear enough. They knew about Declan. They knew Marcus was getting involved, and they wanted him to back off before things escalated, which meant he was already making them nervous. Good. Back at the apartment, Marcus helped Declan with homework, made dinner, went through the bedtime routine. His son asked about Nora, about the new job, about whether they'd see each other again. Yeah, buddy, we'll see them a lot. Good, I like her. She's smart. Yeah, she is. After Declan was asleep, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with his phone and the wooden box he kept in the high cupboard. Inside, folded flag challenge, coin letter from an Afghan family thanking the unknown sniper who'd saved their children. He read the letter again, remembering that mission. Remembered Kareem calling adjustments. Remembered the impossible shot through a window. Remembered the lives saved. Remembered the next mission, the IED. They didn't see Kareem dying while Marcus held pressure on wounds that wouldn't stop bleeding. Being useful got people killed, but so did standing aside. Marcus put the letter away and opened his laptop. Started researching David Cross, North Point Technologies. Argent Strategic Services. Building the intelligence picture. Identifying the vectors mapping the threat. Doing what he'd been trained to do. His phone rang at midnight. Elena Sterling. Marcus, I'm sorry to call so late. What happened? Nothing. I wanted to say thank you. Properly. Not in a conference room with lawyers and conditions. Thank you for saving Nora. Thank you for agreeing to help. Thank you for understanding what this really is. She's a kid. Declan's a kid. Nobody should be targeting children. No, they shouldn't. Silence on the line, comfortable somehow. Get some sleep, Elena. Tomorrow we start planning. Tomorrow. Yes. Good night, Marcus. Good night. He ended the call and stared at his research for another hour, building the picture piece by piece. By 2 a.m., he had enough to know this was bigger than corporate rivalry. David Cross wasn't just trying to hurt Elena's business. He was trying to take everything. And he had the resources to do it. The nightmare came again at 4. Kareem's voice, the shot, the explosion. But this time when he woke, Marcus didn't try to push it away. Instead, he let the memories come. Let himself remember what he'd been. What he could still be when the situation demanded it. The invisible man was about to become visible again. And that meant someone was going to get hurt. Monday morning arrived with rain and the kind of gray light that made promises feel distant. Marcus stood in Apex Innovations' Security Operations Center for the first time as an employee rather than a visitor, watching Mike Brennan brief the night shift handover. 6 men in various stages of alertness, coffee cups in hand, radios clipped to belts. Former cops and military, decent enough at their jobs but operating within a framework that hadn't anticipated the threat already inside the perimeter. Mike finished the briefing and caught Marcus's eye. Cole, good to have you aboard. Team, this is Marcus Cole, our new Director of Integrated Security. He reports directly to Mrs. Sterling, and as of today, security protocols run through him. The reactions varied. Curiosity from the younger guys, skepticism from the veterans, and outright hostility from the man standing near the coffee station. Frank Romano had lost his kingdom overnight, demoted to operations coordinator. The humiliation showed in every rigid line of his posture. Marcus kept his assessment brief. I've reviewed 2 years of incident reports. Pattern I'm seeing: every security breach happened during shift changes. That's not coincidence. Someone's studying your rotations, timing their moves for maximum vulnerability. One of the younger guards, Thompson, raised a hand. But we vary the shift times, different every week. By 15 minutes, still predictable if you're watching close enough. Mike pulled up the schedule on the main monitor. So what do you recommend? Randomize everything. Shift changes, patrol routes, break times, make it impossible to establish a pattern, and stop separating physical and digital security. Threats don't recognize that boundary anymore. Frank's voice cut across the room, sharp with barely contained anger. We've been securing this building for 7 years without incident. Now you're here 3 days and suddenly everything we do is wrong. Marcus met his eyes directly. You had 0 incidents because nobody was actively targeting you. That changed. Adapt or get replaced. The silence that followed was the kind that precedes violence or surrender. Frank chose surrender, turning away to refill his coffee with deliberate movements that said this conversation wasn't over. Mike cleared his throat. All right, everyone, back to stations. Cole, my office. The office was barely large enough for a desk and 2 chairs, but it had a door and walls thick enough for honest conversation. Mike dropped into his chair with a sigh. Frank's going to be a problem. I know. He's got friends on the board. Wallace Pierce specifically. They go back 20 years. Also, something I know. Mike studied him for a moment. You're not worried. I'm worried about threats to Elena and Nora. Frank's ego doesn't make the list. A smile flickered across Mike's face. Fair enough. So what's the real plan here? Because those men watching the building, the school incidents, this isn't standard corporate security work. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed Mike the threatening text from Saturday night. Whoever's running this operation wants me to back off, which means I'm already disrupting their timeline. So you're using yourself as bait. I'm making them react instead of act. Reactive opponents make mistakes. Mike leaned back, understanding, settling into his expression. You've done this before. Not corporate security. Something else. Something else. How much of your file is classified? Enough that you won't find answers by looking. Mike nodded slowly, accepting the boundaries. All right. What do you need from me? Complete access to all systems, all personnel files, all incident reports going back 5 years. And I need your read on every person in this building. Who's loyal, who's compromised, who's just here for a paycheck. You think we have an insider? I think David Cross has been planning this for months, maybe years. That kind of operation requires intelligence from the inside. Mike's jaw tightened. Frank. Maybe. Or someone he talks to. Or someone with money troubles who got a better offer. We find the leak, we trace it back to source. And then, Marcus stood moving to the door. Then we plug it. Permanently. The rest of Monday was spent in meetings with department heads reviewing protocols identifying vulnerabilities. Marcus took notes, built profiles, mapped relationships. By 5 p.m., he had a preliminary picture of Apex's security architecture and 36 ways to compromise it. Elena found him in the security center at 6, Nora trailing behind with a backpack and an exhausted expression that suggested homework battles. Declan's in conference room 12. He finished his math already. Overachiever. Must get that from his mother. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. How's your first day? Productive. I need to brief you on what I found, but not here. Too many ears. Elena glanced around the operations center, noting the staff trying not to look like they were listening. My office. 20 minutes. Bring coffee. It's a long list. She left heels, clicking away down the corridor. Marcus pulled up the last file he'd been reviewing David Cross's employment history before founding Northpoint. MIT graduate, early career at defense contractors, specialization in encryption algorithms and cybersecurity. Smart, methodical patient. Exactly the kind of opponent who'd plan 3 moves ahead. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number different from Saturday's last warning. Walk away while you still can. Marcus screenshot the message and forwarded it to Mike with a note to trace the number. Then he went to collect Declan. Conference room 12 had become something like a second home for the kids. Nora's volcano project occupied one corner. Declan's dinosaur research spread across the small table. They were arguing amicably about whether Tyrannosaurus Rex could actually roar, or if it made sounds more like a crocodile. Dad. Tell her Jurassic Park showed them roaring. Movies get lots of things wrong, buddy. Science suggests Nora might be right. Nora's triumphant expression was immediately endearing. See, your dad knows science. Marcus helped Declan pack up while Nora gathered her own materials. The easy comfort between the kids was unexpected but useful. Keeping them together simplified protection and gave each child a buffer against the stress neither fully understood. Elena's office had a different energy after hours. The CEO armor was slightly loosened jacket draped over her chair, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She'd brought coffee as promised, along with Chinese takeout that smelled better than anything in Marcus's usual rotation. Figured you might not have eaten. You figured right. They ate in the seating area while Marcus pulled up his findings on his laptop. Your security has 17 critical vulnerabilities. 3 involve physical access points that aren't monitored after 10 p.m. 4 involve digital systems that could be compromised through social engineering. The rest require insider knowledge to exploit. Elena set down her chopsticks. Which ones worry you most? All of them. But especially the personnel issues. You have 3 employees with significant financial stress, 2 going through messy divorces, and 1 with a gambling problem that put him $30,000 in debt last year. Who? Marcus showed her the file. Elena's expression went cold. Frank. Casinos in Atlantic City. Lost big, borrowed from the wrong people, got himself in a hole he can't climb out of on his salary. You think David approached him? I think someone desperate and resentful is exactly the kind of person David would target. Offer to clear the debt, add enough cash for a fresh start somewhere else. All he has to do is share your schedule, your security protocols, your movements. Elena stood pacing to the window. 30 years he worked for this company. I trusted him. People change when they were cornered. David knew that. Probably picked Frank specifically because of the combination of access and vulnerability. So what do? Fire him. Arrest him. Not yet. Right now he's useful because we know about him. The moment we move against Frank, David loses his intelligence source and changes tactics. Better to feed Frank information we want David to have. Elena turned, understanding dawning. We use him to mislead David, make him think he knows our plans when actually we're executing something completely different. Classic counterintelligence. You've done this before too. Different context, same principles. Elena returned to the seating area but didn't sit. Energy was building in her, the kind that came from seeing a path forward after weeks of feeling hunted. What else? Marcus pulled up another file. I traced those surveillance operatives. Argent Strategic Services, like I thought. Private military contractor, high-end work only. They don't take jobs under 6 figures. David's spending serious money on this. He's spending enough that I think this isn't just about revenge. He wants something specific. The quantum encryption algorithms, the ones we developed together. Marcus nodded. Patents are in your name. If he can't buy them, can't win them in court, he needs to steal them. Corporate espionage at this level justifies the expense. But why target Nora? The algorithms are in our secure servers, not with my daughter. Because you're the access point. David's betting that threatening Nora will make you vulnerable, distracted, willing to make mistakes. Maybe even willing to give him what he wants in exchange for safety. Elena's hands clenched into fists. He doesn't know me as well as he thinks. No, but he knows you well enough to hurt you. That's the part that matters. Silence fell between them, heavy with implications. Through the office window, they could see the kids still working in the conference room. Declan was showing Nora something on his tablet, both of them bent close over the screen. Elena's voice dropped lower. I need to tell you something. About David. About why this is personal beyond the business. Marcus waited. 8 years ago, we weren't just business partners. We were friends, close friends. I trusted him with everything, my ideas, my fears, my dreams for what we could build. When he proposed that night, it wasn't just romantic. It was a complete vision of our future. Partnership in every sense. Marriage, company, life. And you said no. I said I cared about him, but not in that way. I tried to be kind, tried to preserve the friendship. But David took it as rejection of everything we'd built together. The next day, he barely spoke to me. Within a week, he was talking about selling the company. Within a month, he'd filed the lawsuit. Marcus processed this, fitting it into the larger pattern. So for him, this isn't about algorithms or money. It's about making you regret choosing your path over his. He wants me to need him, to come begging, to admit I was wrong. That's not going to happen. Elena's eyes met his, and something shifted in the air between them. Recognition of shared understanding of parallel wounds. No, it's not. Marcus closed his laptop. I need access to your research servers. Need to see what David's actually after, how he might try to access it. It can set you up tomorrow. Highest level clearance. And I need details on the charity gala in 3 weeks. The one David knows you'll attend. Elena's expression sharpened. You think that's his timeline? The gala. It's perfect. Public event, predictable schedule, you'll be visible and vulnerable. If I wanted to make a move, that's when I'd do it. So we cancel. No, we use it. Same logic as Frank, we let David think his plan is working while we prepare something he won't see coming. Elena moved to her desk, pulled up her calendar. Children's Hospital fundraiser. I'm the keynote speaker. 500 guests, most of them donors or board members. High profile, lots of press coverage. David will have people there, maybe as guests, definitely as staff, catering, security, technical crew. He'll be watching, waiting for his opportunity. To do what exactly? Marcus stood, moving to stand beside her at the desk. That's what we need to figure out. He's not going to physically attack you in front of 500 witnesses. More likely a digital assault timed to coincide with your presence there. Steal the algorithms while you're away from the office, distracted by the event. Our servers require biometric authentication. Voice, retinal scan, fingerprint. Even if he has my passwords, he can't access anything without me physically present. Unless he clones your credentials. Record your voice, spoof your retinal pattern, lift a fingerprint. With enough planning and resources, it's possible. Elena's face went pale. He's been collecting that data. Every time I do a video interview, every time I'm photographed at events, every time you're in public, you're giving him pieces. It's why this is taking so long. He's building a complete profile, making sure when he makes his move, it works. Elena sat down slowly, the implications settling in. So the gala isn't just bait. It's his timeline. He's been planning toward that specific date. Which means we have 3 weeks to outplan him. Marcus's phone buzzed. Text from Mike. Traced that number. Burner phone, purchased cash in Maryland 2 weeks ago. Dead end. Marcus showed Elena the screen. They're careful. Military-grade operational security. But everyone makes mistakes eventually. And if they don't, if David's plan is airtight, Marcus met her eyes, then we make him think it's working, right up until the moment we spring the trap. But we need to be ready for anything, including the possibility that Frank isn't the only insider or that David has resources we haven't identified yet. Elena's jaw set in a line Marcus was beginning to recognize. Determination layered over fear while forcing its way through uncertainty. What do you need? A completely new security protocol for the gala. Different transportation, different routes, different timing. And I need to train your team in how to spot threats they're not looking for. Done. Anything else? Yeah, I need you to trust me, even when my methods don't look like corporate security, because what's coming won't be neat or clean. Elena held his gaze. You have my trust. Do whatever's necessary. The words hung between them, weighted with more than professional confidence. Marcus nodded once and moved toward the door to collect Declan. Elena's voice stopped him. Marcus, thank you for understanding what this really is, for not trying to tell me I'm overreacting or paranoid. You're not paranoid if someone's actually hunting you. He left her standing at her desk, silhouetted against the city lights, and thought about all the ways this could go wrong. Tuesday brought the first training session. Marcus gathered the security team in the main conference room. No PowerPoint, no handouts, just scenarios and stress tests. Thompson. Someone approaches the front desk claiming to be here for a meeting with Mrs. Sterling. Dressed professionally, has ID, knows the right terminology. What do you do? Thompson straightened. Check the visitor log, verify the appointment. Good start. What if the appointment is there? Escort them to the appropriate floor. Wrong. You verify with Mrs. Sterling's assistant directly, not just the log, because logs can be forged or hacked. The human verification is your last line of defense. Marcus moved to the next guard. Rivers, you're monitoring cameras and see someone in maintenance uniform working on a ceiling access panel on the executive floor. Normal maintenance window, proper credentials visible. What's wrong with this picture? Rivers studied the scenario Marcus had pulled up on screen. Nothing jumps out. His left hand never leaves his pocket while he's working. Right-handed person doing ceiling work would use their dominant hand for tools. He's hiding something. Maybe a weapon, maybe a communication device. Either way, he gets intercepted and verified before he gains access. The training continued for 3 hours. Marcus threw scenario after scenario at them, breaking down their assumptions, teaching them to see patterns instead of surface details. By the end, half the team looked exhausted, and the other half looked energized. Frank looked murderous. Mike pulled Marcus aside during the break. They're not used to being pushed this hard. They'll adapt or they'll fail. There's no middle ground with what's coming. Frank's organizing opposition. I heard him talking to some of the senior guys about going to Wallace Pierce. Let him. Wallace already knows I have Elena's full backing. Complaining just makes Frank look weak. Mike shook his head. You're not worried about anything, are you? I'm worried about plenty, just not about office politics. The afternoon session focused on counter-surveillance. Marcus had the team walk the building's perimeter, identifying sightlines and blind spots. They found 17 locations where someone could observe the building for hours without being noticed. Marcus marked each one for enhanced monitoring. Frank approached as they were wrapping up, jaw tight with controlled anger. This is bullshit. You're treating my team like they're incompetent. I'm treating them like they're facing a threat they haven't encountered before. That's not an insult. It's reality. You don't know the first thing about corporate security. Marcus stepped closer, voice dropping to a register that made several nearby guards pause. I know that 3 weeks ago someone mapped this building's security response times down to the second. I know your gambling debts total $37,000. And I know that coincidences stop being coincidences when they pile up this high. Frank's face went from red to white. You're accusing me. I'm stating facts. What you do with them is your choice. But understand this. Everyone is being watched now. Everyone is being verified. And if I find evidence that anyone on this team compromised Elena or Nora's safety, there won't be a hearing or a process. There will be consequences. Marcus walked away before Frank could respond, leaving him standing alone on the plaza. Mike caught up as Marcus headed back inside. That was a risk, confronting him directly. Calculated risk. Now he knows we suspect him, which means he'll either fold under pressure or make a mistake trying to cover his tracks. Either way, we learned something. And if he warns David, even better. David learns we're onto the insider play, has to accelerate his timeline or change approach. Reactive opponents make mistakes. Mike grinned. You really have done this before. On Wednesday afternoon, Marcus took Declan and Nora to the building's security monitoring room during their homework time. Both kids were fascinated by the wall of screens, the constant flow of information. Nora pointed to a monitor showing the lobby. Can you see everywhere from here? Most places, but there are always blind spots. Declan studied the screens with the kind of focus that reminded Marcus unsettlingly of himself. Like that hallway, the camera doesn't see the corner. Marcus followed his son's gaze. The kid was right. Third-floor service corridor camera positioned wrong corner, completely obscured. Good eye, buddy. How'd you spot that? I notice things, like you do. Something tightened in Marcus's chest. The last thing he wanted was for Declan to inherit his hypervigilance. his constant threat assessment, his inability to ever fully relax. But maybe that ship had already sailed. Nora tugged on his sleeve. "Mr. Cole, why are bad people trying to hurt us?" The question was delivered with the kind of directness only children managed, cutting through all the adult euphemisms and obfuscations. Marcus knelt to her level. Because sometimes when people can't get what they want the right way, they try the wrong way, and they pick targets they think will be easy. But they're wrong about you and your mom being easy targets. Because you're protecting us now. Yeah, and because you're both stronger than they think. Nora considered this, then nodded. Mom says you're very good at keeping people safe. That you did it for your whole job before. Something like that. Did you ever get scared? Marcus glanced at Declan, who was listening carefully, despite pretending to focus on the monitors. Every time. Fear's not bad. Fear keeps you alert, makes you careful. It's what you do with the fear that matters. What did you do with yours? I used it. Let it make me sharper, faster, more prepared. And I never let it stop me from doing what needed to be done. Nora smiled, apparently satisfied with this answer, and returned to her homework. Declan met his father's eyes across the room, understanding passing between them. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. Thursday brought the first real test. Marcus was reviewing personnel files when the alarm system triggered. Not the main alarm, a subtle alert on the executive floor network that most people wouldn't even notice. He pulled up the security feed. Someone had attempted to access Elena's private server using administrator credentials. The attempt failed due to biometric requirements, but the timing was calculated. Middle of the afternoon, Elena in a meeting on 26, most of the tech team at lunch. Marcus called Mike. "We have a probe, someone testing our response time and security layers. David, or one of his people, have it pull the access logs trace where the attempt originated." 20 minutes later, they had the answer. The attempted access came from Frank Romano's workstation, but Frank had been on patrol rounds during that window, which meant either someone used his credentials while he was away, or the whole thing was designed to frame him. Marcus found Frank in the security office filling out patrol reports. "Someone used your workstation 40 minutes ago to try accessing restricted servers. You want to tell me about that?" Frank's confusion looked genuine. "I've been on rounds since noon. Check the logs." "I did. Which means either you're lying about the rounds or someone has your credentials." Frank pulled out his access card, hands shaking slightly. "I haven't let this out of my sight all day." "Passwords." I might have written them down. In my desk." Marcus fought the urge to put his fist through a wall. "Show me." Frank's desk was in a shared office space accessible to a dozen people. The password written on a sticky note was tucked under his keyboard. Security 101 violation, the kind of mistake that got people killed in other contexts. Marcus pocketed the note. "New passwords changed immediately, and from now on your access is restricted to physical security only. No network credentials." "You can't do that. I need those systems to do my job." "You needed them." Past tense. Consider this your warning. One more security violation and you're done. Frank's face cycled through anger to resignation. "This is because of the debts. You think I sold out? I think someone's using you whether you know it or not. Prove me wrong." Marcus left Frank staring at his empty desk drawer and went to brief Elena. She was in a conference call when he arrived, but took one look at his expression and wrapped up within 2 minutes. What happened? He explained the breach attempt, the compromised credentials, the password security violation. Elena's response was immediate. "Fire him." "Not yet. Whoever's doing this will just find another way in. Better to control the vulnerability we know about. So we keep a compromised security officer on staff." We keep a controlled asset who doesn't know he's being controlled. There's a difference. Elena paced her office, the careful control she usually maintained starting to fracture around the edges. I'm tired of feeling hunted in my own building. Tired of looking at my employees and wondering who's been bought. Tired of worrying every time Nora goes to school or I leave for a meeting. Marcus moved to block her pacing, forcing her to stop and look at him. Then we change the dynamic. Stop reacting to David's moves and make him react to ours. How? We leak information, feed Frank details about the gala, wrong security protocols, false routes, fake timelines. David thinks he's getting intelligence when actually he's getting a trap. Understanding flickered in Elena's eyes. And when he moves based on that information, we're ready with the real plan. He's exposed, off-balance, vulnerable. That's risky. If we miscalculate, if he sees through it, he won't, because everything he knows about you says you'd rely on standard corporate security. He won't expect military-grade counterintelligence. Elena studied his face, searching for something. You're enjoying this. Not the danger, but the tactics. The strategy. Marcus considered denying it, then decided on honesty. Part of me is, yeah. It's what I'm good at, what I was trained for. Spent 3 years trying to forget that, trying to be someone simpler. But maybe simple isn't who I am. And Declan, what does he think about his father going back to being a warrior? The question hit harder than Elena probably intended. He's 8. He thinks I'm keeping bad guys away. He doesn't understand what that really means. Do you want him to? No. But I want him alive more than I want him innocent. Elena's hand came up, hesitated, then settled lightly on his uninjured shoulder. We'll get through this. Together. The touch lasted only a moment before she pulled back, professional distance reasserting itself. But something had shifted in the space between them, an acknowledgement of connection beyond employer and employee. Marcus cleared his throat. I should get back to monitoring, and you have that board meeting in 10 minutes. Right. The board, where Wallace will probably complain about your training methods. Let him. You hired me for results, not popularity. Elena smiled, small but genuine. No, I hired you because when everyone else froze, you moved, and because you see what others miss. Don't forget that. She left for her meeting, and Marcus returned to the security center to begin constructing the false intelligence they'd feed to Frank. Details calibrated to be convincing, while ensuring David's people would be in exactly the wrong place when the actual operation went down. Friday evening, after the kids were settled with homework, Marcus's phone rang. Unknown number again, but this time he answered on speaker with Mike and Elena both present in her office. The voice was male professional, carrying the kind of calm that came from complete confidence. Mr. Cole, I represent interested parties who believe you're making a mistake involving yourself in this situation. My clients are prepared to offer generous compensation if you choose to step away. $50,000 transferred immediately. All you have to do is walk away. Marcus kept his voice even. Tell your clients I'm not interested. Your son attends Riverside Elementary. 3rd grade Mrs. Chen's class. Smart kid. Be a shame if something happened that made you regret choosing the wrong side. Ice flooded Marcus's veins, but his voice stayed level. You just made a tactical error. See, before this call, I was doing a job. Now it's personal. Tell your clients that every threat they make, every move they plan, I'm going to dismantle piece by piece. And when I'm done, they're going to wish they'd never heard my name. He ended the call and looked at Elena and Mike. That was either David or his proxy. They're escalating because we're disrupting their timeline. Elena's face had gone pale. They threatened Declan directly. Yeah, which tells me they're getting desperate. Confident opponents don't resort to overt threats. They just act. Mike was already on his phone. I'm calling the police, getting patrols near the school. No. Police presence tips our hand, lets David know we're worried. Instead, we put undercover security at the school, former military people who can spot threats without looking like security. I know some guys, Mike offered. Private contractors, discreet, reliable. Set it up, and I want eyes on every approach to that school 24/7. Elena moved to the window, arms wrapped around herself. This is spiraling. Maybe we should— Don't suggest backing down. That's what they want. Fear makes people make mistakes. She turned, and in that moment, Marcus saw past the CEO armor to the terrified mother underneath. What if I make a mistake? What if my choices get the kids hurt? Marcus crossed to her close enough that she had to look up to meet his eyes. You're not making mistakes. You're refusing to be a victim. That's strength, not weakness. And I promise you Declan and Nora will not be touched, not while I'm standing. You can't promise that. Yeah, I can. Because I've spent 17 years learning how to keep people alive in situations a lot worse than corporate espionage. David Cross is dangerous, but he's not a war zone, and I've survived plenty of those. Something in Elena's posture relaxed fractionally. She nodded, pulling the armor back into place. All right. We proceed as planned. Leak the false gala information through Frank, prepare the real security protocol, wait for David to make his move. And when he does, we're ready with something he never saw coming. The weekend was quieter. Marcus spent Saturday teaching Declan basic situational awareness, how to spot when someone was following, how to identify exits in any room, what to do if approached by strangers, packaged as games and puzzles lessons that might save his son's life without traumatizing him in the process. Sunday, Elena invited them to her sister's house upstate. The property sat at the end of a long driveway surrounded by woods naturally defensible with good sight lines. Marcus approved immediately. Nora and Declan spent the afternoon exploring the creek behind the house, catching tadpoles and arguing about whether frogs could breathe underwater. Normal kid things, blissfully unaware of the tactical considerations their parents were making. Elena sat beside Marcus on the back porch watching the children play. They're good together. I wasn't sure at first forcing them into friendship because of circumstances, but it's real. Kids adapt faster than adults. They don't overthink connection. Unlike us. The comment hung in the air, weighted with implications neither was ready to examine directly. Marcus kept his eyes on the creek. I need to tell you something. About Afghanistan, about why I left. Elena waited, not pushing. My spotter's name was Kareem. Best friend I ever had. We'd been partners for 3 years, dozens of missions. Trusted each other completely. We were providing overwatch for a convoy in Kandahar when I saw the trigger man for an IED. Made the shot, saved the convoy. But there was a second device. Kareem was getting our team to safety when it detonated. I held pressure on wounds that wouldn't stop bleeding and watched him die. I'm sorry. The Marine Corps called him a hero, gave him medals, but I couldn't shake the feeling that if I'd been better, faster, more careful, maybe I would have seen both threats. Maybe he'd still be alive. That's survivor's guilt. It's not rational. Doesn't make it less real. When I got home and Maria told me about the cancer, about having 6 months if she was lucky, I realized I'd spent years in a war zone while life kept happening without me. Declan was 5, barely knew me, so I chose to be present. Took the discharge, became the dad I should have been from the start. Elena's hand found his on the armrest, fingers threading through his. That wasn't running away. That was choosing what mattered most. Maybe. But part of me felt like I was giving up. Like I couldn't handle being what the Marines needed anymore. And now you're using those same skills to protect my daughter. Kareem would probably say you found another mission. Marcus looked down at their joined hands, surprised by how natural it felt. I'm not that person anymore. The sniper, the operator. I can use the training, but I'm not. You're exactly that person. You're just also a father and an employee and someone trying to build a different life. People contain multitudes. The philosophical turn made him smile despite himself. You always this deep on Sunday afternoons. Only with people I trust. The words settled between them, honest and vulnerable, in a way that had nothing to do with tactics or protection. Declan's voice called from the creek. "Dad, come see. We found a turtle." Marcus squeezed Elena's hand once and released it standing to join the kids, but as he walked down toward the water, he felt Elena's gaze following him, warm and considering. That night back in the city, Marcus received an encrypted email. No sender name, but the content was clear detailed layouts of the charity gala venue security protocols, access codes, information that should have been locked down tight. He forwarded it immediately to Mike and Elena with a single line. "The leak is confirmed." Elena's reply came within minutes. Time to spring the trap. Monday morning arrived with purpose. Marcus called a full security meeting including Frank and laid out the false gala protocols with convincing authority. Different arrival time, different an entrance, different route through the building. All carefully designed to pull David's resources to the wrong locations. Frank took detailed notes, too detailed for someone just monitoring physical security. After the meeting, Mike pulled Marcus aside. "He's going to pass that information along." "That's the plan. Give him 24 hours to make contact, then we start seeing how David repositions his assets. And if David sees through it, then we're no worse off than we are now. But I don't think he will. Everything we know about him says he's arrogant, convinced he's always the smartest person in the room. That arrogance makes him predictable." Tuesday afternoon surveillance teams Mike had positioned near known Argent Strategic Services locations reported activity. 2 operatives meeting with someone in business attire who matched David Cross's general description. They were studying documents pointing at what appeared to be building layouts. The trap was working. Wednesday brought an unexpected development. Jennifer Bradford appeared in the security center looking worried. "Marcus, we have a problem. Someone just tried to auction Apex's quantum encryption research on a dark web marketplace. Starting bid $50 million. Marcus's blood went cold. "Show me." The auction listing was professional detailed, included enough technical specifications to prove authenticity, and the auction date was scheduled for the night of the charity gala. Elena arrived within minutes of being notified, face pale. "He's not just planning to steal it, he's planning to sell it to the highest bidder." Marcus studied the listing mind, racing through implications. The gala was never the actual target. Its cover. While you're at the event, visible and accounted for, David's people access your servers and transfer the data. By the time you realize what happened, the research is already sold and distributed. "We need to involve the FBI. This is beyond corporate espionage." "Not yet. The moment feds show up, David goes underground. Better to let him think the plan is working." Elena's hands clenched. "So we just wait? Let him think he's winning?" "We wait and we prepare. Because when David makes his move, we're going to be ready with something he never anticipated." "Which is?" Marcus met her eyes directly. "We give him exactly what he thinks he wants. Let him steal the data. Let him think the auction is proceeding. And then we trace every bidder, identify every buyer, and coordinate with federal authorities to round up the entire network in one operation." Elena's expression shifted from fear to something harder. "We turn his attack into a sting operation." "Exactly. But it requires perfect timing and complete commitment. You'll have to attend the gala as planned, act normal, give David no reason to suspect we're onto him." "I can do that. And you'll have to trust that when things go sideways, because they will, I'll have already positioned countermeasures you can't see." Elena held his gaze. "I trust you. Do whatever's necessary." The words echoed their conversation from weeks ago, but now they carried additional weight. This wasn't just professional confidence anymore. It was something deeper, more personal. Marcus nodded once and returned to planning, building the operation piece by piece, accounting for every variable he could identify and preparing contingencies for the ones he couldn't. 2 weeks to the gala. 2 weeks to outplan a man who'd been preparing for months. The Invisible Man was about to become very visible indeed. And when the trap finally sprung, someone was going to learn that warehouse workers could be just as dangerous as the soldiers they used to be. The night before the gala, Marcus stood in his apartment watching Declan sleep. The boy's face was peaceful, untroubled by the calculations running through his father's mind. 17 different ways tomorrow could go wrong. 32 variables that could shift the outcome from controlled operation to catastrophic failure. His phone buzzed. Elena awake at midnight, despite needing to be camera-ready in 9 hours. Can't sleep either. Occupational hazard. You rehearse your speech 3 times. Jennifer says I sound too rehearsed, wants me to be more spontaneous. Marcus heard the anxiety underneath the words, the mother's fear wearing the CEO's voice. You'll be fine. Just remember, everything you do tomorrow is theater. The real operation happens in spaces David can't see. That's what worries me, not being able to see it. That's what keeps you safe. David's watching you, which means he's not watching what actually matters. Silence stretched across the line, comfortable despite the tension. Marcus, when this is over, when Nora's safe and David's in custody and everything goes back to normal, what happens then? The question carried weight beyond tactics and timelines. We figure it out. Together. Together. I like that word. Me too. He ended the call and returned to his contingency planning, mapping the hotel's infrastructure against known Argent operational patterns. By 3 a.m., he had the picture complete. By 4, he'd briefed Mike and positioned their counter-surveillance assets. By 5, he was showering and mentally preparing for the longest day of his civilian life. Declan and Nora were already at Elena's sister's house upstate, delivered the previous afternoon with security Marcus had personally vetted. 2 former Marines he'd served with in Kandahar, men who understood what was at stake and wouldn't hesitate if threats materialized. Leaving his son behind had torn something in Marcus's chest, but keeping him close tomorrow would be worse. The Grand Cascade Hotel occupied an entire city block downtown, glass and steel architecture that screamed wealth and exclusivity. 500 guests would fill the ballroom by 7 p.m. Elena would deliver her keynote at 8. And somewhere in that window, David Cross would make his move. Marcus arrived at noon, 6 hours before official event start, wearing hotel maintenance coveralls and carrying a toolbox full of surveillance equipment. Security waved him through without question. The false credentials Mike's contacts had provided were perfect, backed by digital trails that would survive any verification attempt. He spent 2 hours installing micro cameras in locations the venue's existing security couldn't cover. Service corridors, loading docks, technical equipment rooms. Anywhere David's people might stage their operation. Mike's voice came through his earpiece. Counter-surveillance teams in position. We have eyes on 4 Argent operatives already inside as catering staff, 2 more as AV technicians. Let them work. We need them confident, committed. The moment they realize we're onto them, the whole operation collapses. Risky. They could abort, try another approach. They won't. David's timeline is locked to the auction. He can't reschedule $50 million worth of dark web bidders without losing credibility. Marcus moved through the hotel's basement infrastructure, memorizing routes and timing security patrols. He found the server room that would be David's actual target, not the ballroom, not Elena herself, but the network access point that could be used to compromise Apex's remote servers if you had the right credentials. Jennifer's IT team had spent the last week building a honey trap. Fake quantum encryption files layered with tracking code and backdoors that would let them trace anyone who downloaded the data. David would get exactly what he wanted, and in doing so would hand Marcus everything needed to dismantle his entire operation. By 3 p.m., Marcus had changed into a security suit and taken position in the hotel's central monitoring room. The actual hotel security was unaware of his presence, thanks to credentials that showed him as FBI working a separate case. The lies stacked on lies, each layer insulating the real operation from detection. Elena arrived at 4 earlier than the false timeline they'd fed to Frank. Her car pulled into the underground garage through an entrance Marcus had arranged personally, bypassing the main approach where Argent operatives waited with cameras and communication equipment. She looked stunning in a midnight blue evening gown, hair styled in an elegant updo that made her look simultaneously powerful and vulnerable. But what caught Marcus's attention was her eyes. Clear-focused, showing none of the fear he knew she carried. He met her in the service elevator, falling into step beside her, like he'd been her shadow forever. "How are you holding up?" "Terrified, but I'm good at hiding it." "You've done this before." "Board meetings with hostile investors trying to take my company. Not quite the same, but similar principles. Project Confidence, never let them see weakness." The elevator climbed in silence until Elena's hand found his. "Thank you. For everything. For Nora. For Declan. For making me feel like I'm not fighting alone." Marcus squeezed her fingers once before releasing them as the elevator doors opened to the event level. "You were never alone. You just didn't know where to look for allies." She smiled, brief but genuine, then the CEO mask locked fully into place. When she stepped out into the corridor where event staff waited, she was every inch the powerful executive attending her annual charity commitment. Marcus melted back into the shadows, returning to the monitoring room where the real work was beginning. By 6 p.m., guests started arriving. Society pages and business elite politicians and philanthropists, all dressed in their finest, and writing checks that would fund children's medical research for another year. The legitimate purpose of the event created perfect cover for illegitimate activity happening in parallel. Mike's voice came through the secure channel. "Movement in the basement. 2 of our Argent subjects just accessed the server room using maintenance credentials. Let them in. They're expecting network security, so give them a fight. Make them work for it. Make them think they're actually stealing something." On the monitors, Marcus watched the 2 operatives dressed as electricians plug equipment into the hotel's network infrastructure. Jennifer's IT team, monitoring from Apex headquarters, began the carefully choreographed dance. Resistance that looked real but ultimately failed firewalls that held just long enough before crumbling authentication requests that were bypassed through methods that seemed clever but were actually intentional vulnerabilities. David's people were downloading the quantum encryption files, and with them the tracking code that would map their entire network. At 7:30, Elena took the stage for preliminary remarks. She was gracious and warm, thanking donors and sharing stories of children whose lives had been saved by previous year's funding. The perfect performance of someone completely unaware that beneath her feet, corporate espionage was playing out. Marcus split his attention between her safety and the server room operation. The Argent operatives had completed their data theft and were now retreating confident and careful. Mike's teams followed at a distance, documenting their movements without interfering. Then, everything shifted. The hotel's main lights flickered. Emergency exit signs illuminated. Fire alarms began their piercing wail, though no smoke detectors had triggered. "We have a problem," Jennifer's voice crackled through the earpiece, urgent and tight. "Someone bypassed the fake server. They're in the real system. Live access to Apex right now." Marcus's blood turned to ice. "How we air-gapped the critical systems." "They're using Elena's biometric credentials. Voice, retinal scan, fingerprint, all of it. The system thinks Elena is physically in her office authorizing the access." On stage, Elena had paused mid-sentence as the fire alarms activated. Security was moving through the crowd, directing people toward exits. Controlled chaos, exactly the kind of confusion that would let operatives disappear into the crowd. But Marcus wasn't watching the ballroom anymore. He was running toward Elena, cutting through the panicked guests with single-minded focus. "They cloned your biometrics. Everything, voice, retina, fingerprint. David's had months to collect the data. He's not stealing the fake files. He's stealing everything. Elena's face went pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. Stop them. Whatever it takes. We can't stop them remotely. The only way to break their access is to kill the authentication at source. You need to get to Apex headquarters and revoke your own credentials from the secure terminal. That's 30 minutes away. By then they'll have everything. So we don't take 30 minutes. We take 10. Marcus grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the service exits. Behind them, hotel security was dealing with the fire alarm situation. In front of them, Marcus's mental map of the city was calculating routes and timing. Mike appeared from the crowd, 3 of his best men with him. We have 6 Argent operatives converging on the ballroom exits. They were waiting for the Kea. Let them go. They're not the priority anymore. The priority is getting Elena to Apex before David drains her servers dry. They hit the underground garage at a sprint. Marcus's truck was positioned exactly where he'd left its keys already in his pocket. Elena kicked off her heels and climbed into the passenger seat, while Mike and his team scattered to intercept the pursuing operatives. Marcus took the wheel and punched the accelerator. This is my fault. I should have anticipated biometric cloning. Elena buckled her seatbelt with shaking hands. You anticipated everything else. Even David has to get creative eventually. Creative might just cost you your company. The truck screamed out of the garage into evening traffic. Marcus drove like he'd driven in hostile territory, fast, aggressive, constantly moving through gaps that shouldn't exist. Horns blared, pedestrians scrambled, but the truck kept moving, closing the distance to Apex with each passing second. Elena's phone was already up, connected to Jennifer. Status update. Jennifer's voice was strained. They're in the quantum encryption files. Primary research, secondary applications, military contract specifications. If they get all of it. They won't. We're 8 minutes out. Elena, 8 minutes might not be. It has to be. Make them work for every file. Throw up every delay you can without them knowing it's intentional. Marcus cut across 2 lanes of traffic, took a corner at a speed that had the truck tilting on 2 wheels. You know what this is really about. It's not about stealing research or corporate espionage. David wants you to need him. He's been orchestrating this entire situation to make you vulnerable, to put you in a position where you'd have to ask him for help. Elena stared out the windshield at the city blurring past. Then he doesn't know me at all, because I'd burn the company to ash before I'd give him the satisfaction. That's not surrender. That's choosing what matters over what you've built. Same thing? No, it's not. The words hung between them as Marcus took another corner, tires squealing protest. Apex headquarters loomed ahead, glass and steel reflecting city lights. They hit the underground garage with 2 minutes to spare. Elena was out of the truck before it fully stopped running barefoot across concrete toward the security entrance. Marcus matched her pace weapon drawn clearing corners by instinct. The building's night security recognized Elena and waved them through without question. The executive elevator seemed to take forever, climbing floor by floor, while Elena's breathing came faster, and Jennifer's voice in her ear provided running commentary on exactly what David's people were stealing. Floor 28. Elena's office. The secure terminal that required her physical presence and direct authentication to override any remote access. She pressed her palm to the biometric scanner, stared into the retinal reader, spoke the authorization code in a voice that shook with controlled fury. Sterling Elena. Authorization code Alpha 7 Theta 9. Revoke all remote access to Apex primary servers. Lockdown protocol effective immediately. The system processed for 3 eternal seconds. Then the terminal screen flashed green. Remote access terminated. All external connections severed. Server lockdown complete. Elena collapsed into her desk chair, adrenaline finally giving way to exhaustion. Marcus holstered his weapon and moved to the window, scanning for threats that might have followed them. Jennifer damage assessment. They got maybe 40% of the quantum files before we shut them down. Enough to be valuable, not enough to replicate the full system. Elena's head came up. 40% is still catastrophic. That's years of research military contracts. That's what they think they got. Jennifer's voice carried a hint of satisfaction. But we corrupted the final transmission. The files are laced with errors that won't be obvious until someone tries to actually implement the algorithms. Garbage that looks like gold. Understanding dawned across Elena's face. So David thinks he won, but what he actually stole is worthless. Worse than worthless. Anyone who tries to use those files will find themselves building systems that fail at critical moments. And since we tracked the download, we know exactly where the data went. Marcus pulled out his phone, connecting to Mike. Tell me you got eyes on the operatives. Better than that. FBI just intercepted 4 of them leaving the hotel. Anonymous tip about suspicious activity. Found them with enough hacking equipment to justify immediate detention. And David, gone. Probably watching remotely, smart enough not to be physically present at the scene. Marcus ended the call and turned to Elena. David's in the wind, but his operation is burning. The operatives are in custody, the stolen data is corrupted, and the auction, his phone buzzed. Unknown number, but Marcus answered on speaker. David Cross's voice was smooth, cultured, and currently laced with barely controlled rage. Very clever, Mr. Cole. The fire alarm, the fake server, the corrupted data. I underestimated you. Marcus's voice stayed level. You underestimated a lot of things. Did I? Because from where I'm standing, I still have 40% of Elena's research. Corrupted or not, there are people who will pay handsomely for even partial specifications, and I still have leverage you haven't considered. Ice flooded Marcus's veins. Declan and Nora are safe. Your people can't reach them. Can't they? I have resources you haven't identified yet. Assets you can't see. And I'm betting you care more about those children than you do about winning this particular battle. Elena stood moving beside Marcus so her voice would carry to the phone. David, this is over. Your operatives are in custody. Your data is worthless. The auction is dead. Walk away while you still can. Walk away from you. Elena, you still don't understand. This was never about the algorithms or the company. It was about making you realize what you threw away when you rejected me, making you see that without my partnership, without my protection, you're vulnerable. Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. She was never vulnerable. She just hadn't found the right people to stand with her yet. Oh, I know all about you, Mr. Cole. Warehouse worker, playing soldier. Do you really think you can protect her? Protect her daughter. I have resources that would make your Marine training look like summer camp. Then bring them, because I've been waiting for you to stop hiding behind hired operatives and actually show yourself. Silence on the line. Then quietly, be careful what you wish for. You might just get it. The call ended. Elena's hand found Marcus's arm. He's planning something else, something we haven't seen yet. Yeah, but now he's rattled, emotional. That makes him predictable. Or more dangerous. Marcus holstered his phone and moved to Elena's desk, pulling up security feeds from her sister's property upstate. The house sat quiet in darkness, perimeter sensors showing no breaches. His former Marine colleagues were invisible but present, protecting the children, while the adults dealt with the uglier realities. We need to go there. Get the kids, bring them somewhere more secure. Elena shook her head. David wants us scattered, reactive. The moment we start moving pieces around, he learns our security patterns. Better to keep them where they are with protection he doesn't know about. Marcus considered this, recognized the tactical wisdom even as every paternal instinct screamed to collect Declan immediately. All right, but we increase the security presence. Call in more people. Expand the perimeter. Agreed. They were still planning contingencies when Jennifer appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand and expression grim. We have another problem. The auction site just posted an update. New data files available claim to be authentic Apex quantum encryption specifications, higher quality than the previous offering. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. David had a backup plan, secondary theft while we were focused on the primary operation. Elena pulled up the auction listing on her computer. The specifications shown in the preview images were definitely real details that shouldn't exist outside Apex's most secure systems. How we locked everything down severed all remote access. Because the breach wasn't remote, Marcus realized. It was physical. Someone inside Apex, someone with direct access to the servers, copied the files before we implemented the lockdown. Frank. The name fell like a stone into water. Marcus was already moving toward the door. Where does Frank live? Jennifer pulled up the personnel file. Arlington, 20 minutes north. Get me the address, and call Mike. I need backup on this. Elena grabbed her coat. I'm coming with you. No. You're staying here where it's secure. David's shown he's willing to escalate. I'm not giving him another shot at you. Marcus, this isn't negotiable. You hired me to protect you and Nora. Let me do my job. Their eyes met a battle of wills that lasted 3 heartbeats. Then Elena nodded, stepping back. Bring me proof. I want to know for certain before we destroy a 30-year employee's life. You'll have it. Marcus took the elevator down alone, mind already shifting into operational mode. Frank had been the obvious suspect from the beginning, but that had made Marcus cautious. In his experience, obvious suspects were usually patsies designed to draw attention from the real threat. But maybe sometimes obvious was just obvious. Mike met him in the garage with 2 vehicles and 4 men, all former military, all carrying the kind of hardware that suggested they were prepared for serious resistance. Frank's a 52-year-old security manager, not a trained operative. This is overkill. Mike checked his weapon chambered around. After tonight, I'm not taking chances. The drive to Arlington was tense and quick. Frank's apartment complex was modest, the kind of place where people minded their business and asked no questions. Second-floor corner unit lights off despite it being barely 9 p.m. Marcus approached alone while Mike's team secured the perimeter. He knocked once, waited. No response. Knocked again, louder. Frank, it's Marcus Cole. We need to talk. Still nothing. Marcus tested the door. Unlocked. Wrong. Everything about this was wrong. He pushed the door open, weapon drawn, and stepped into darkness that smelled of copper and failure. Frank Romano sat in his living room chair, head tilted at an angle necks shouldn't bend. Dead for at least an hour based on the temperature. Single gunshot to the temple weapon still in his hand, classic staging of suicide. Marcus didn't touch anything, just took photos with his phone and backed out slowly. Mike appeared at his shoulder. What have we got? A patsy. David got Frank to do his dirty work, then eliminated the evidence. Suicide. Staged to look like it. Probably guilt over betraying his employer. The story will be that Frank cracked under pressure, stole the files, then couldn't live with what he'd done. Clean ending for David. All the blame on a dead man who can't defend himself. Marcus studied the apartment, noting details that would support his conclusion. The gun in Frank's wrong hand, he'd been right-handed. The photos from his desk proved it. The lack of spatter on his clothes despite a close-range headshot. The laptop sitting open on the coffee table, conveniently displaying the copied Apex files. Call the police, report the suicide, and make sure they understand this is a crime scene, not an open and shut case. They'll want to talk to you. You found the body. I'll give a statement, but first I need to update Elena. He stepped outside while Mike coordinated with local police. The night air was cold, clearing his head after the death smell of Frank's apartment. Elena answered on the first ring. Tell me. Frank's dead, staged suicide. David tied up his loose end. Silence on the line, heavy with implications and guilt. 30 years. He worked for this company for 30 years, and I didn't see how desperate he'd become. Didn't see that someone could exploit that desperation. This isn't on you. David picked Frank specifically because he was vulnerable. Could have been anyone in that position. But it wasn't anyone. It was Frank, and now he's dead because I didn't pay attention. Marcus heard the self-recrimination in her voice, the CEO's tendency to accept responsibility for everything happening under her watch. Frank made choices. Bad ones probably under duress, but still choices. You didn't force him into David's pocket. You didn't pull the trigger. No. David did that. And now we have no leverage, no insider to flip, no direct evidence tying him to any of this. We have the auction. The moment David tries to complete that sale, we have proof of theft and trafficking of classified technology. FBI will be very interested in if he tries to complete it. Smart move would be to abandon the auction, take the loss, disappear until the heat dies down. David's not abandoning it. His entire operation has been about proving he could take from you what you wouldn't give freely. Walking away now would be admitting defeat. His ego won't allow it. Elena's voice softened. You sound very certain. I know the type. Guys who need to win more than they need to survive. They're predictable once you understand their psychology. And when the auction happens, what's our move? We let it happen. Let David think he's won. And when the buyers take possession of those corrupted files, when they try to implement systems that fail catastrophically, David becomes a liability to some very dangerous people. They'll solve our problem for us. That's dark. That's survival. David escalated this to lethal force when he killed Frank. Now we play by the rules he established. Police sirens were approaching, blue lights painting the apartment complex in strobing illumination. I need to go. Police will want statements. I'll be back at Apex within 2 hours. Be careful. David's already killed one person tonight. He might not be done. I'm always careful. It's what's kept me alive this long. He ended the call as the first patrol car pulled up. The next 90 minutes were spent giving statements, answering questions, and watching crime scene techs document Frank's death. The detective in charge was sharp, recognized the staging immediately, but wouldn't commit to calling it homicide without more evidence. By the time Marcus returned to Apex, it was after midnight. Elena was still in her office, the evening gown replaced by jeans and a sweater makeup scrubbed away to reveal the exhaustion underneath. You should go home. Get some sleep. Can't sleep. Keep thinking about Frank, about all the ways this could have been prevented. Marcus sat in the chair across from her desk. Second guessing doesn't change outcomes. It just makes you tired. Is that what you tell yourself when you think about Kareem, about Maria, about all the people you couldn't save? The question was pointed but not cruel, honest in a way that cut deeper than accusations. No. I tell myself that I did what I could with the information I had, and that beating myself up over past failures doesn't prevent future ones. Does it work? Sometimes, when I can actually believe it. Elena smiled, sad and understanding. We're quite the pair, aren't we? Two people pretending they have it together while everything falls apart around them. Everything hasn't fallen apart. Nora and Declan are safe. David's operation is exposed. The research he stole is worthless. That's not failure. That's winning ugly. Winning ugly. I like that. Very honest. Marcus stood, moving to the window. The city spread below them, millions of people living lives that didn't involve corporate espionage or staged suicides or choosing between right and survival. You should go get some sleep. Tomorrow we start planning the end game. Elena joined him at the window, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. The end game. When David finally realizes he lost and we get to return to normal lives. Yeah, normal. You say that like you don't believe it exists. Marcus thought about the question, about 3 years spent building a life that didn't require the skills currently keeping them alive. I think normal is relative. What I thought was normal in Kandahar would look like chaos to someone who'd never left the suburbs. What felt normal as a warehouse worker felt like hiding to the operator I used to be. Maybe there's no universal normal, just what you can live with. And what can you live with? The question wasn't philosophical anymore. It was personal, immediate carrying implications about futures they'd both been avoiding discussing. I can live with protecting people who matter, with using skills that used to scare me in service of something worth fighting for, with Declan having a friend in Nora and both of them growing up safer than they would have been if I'd stayed invisible. And me, can you live with me being part of that equation? Marcus turned to face her directly. Elena, you've been part of the equation since the moment I took that bullet in the mall. This whole thing, the job, the security, the planning, it's not just about keeping you safe. It's about not being alone in the fight anymore. Her hand came up, hesitated at his chest, then settled over his heart where she could feel it beating. I haven't let anyone this close in 8 years. Since David. Since I decided that being alone was safer than risking betrayal again. Safer isn't always better. No, it's not. The space between them collapsed with the kind of inevitability that comes from weeks of carefully maintained distance finally breaking. The kiss was tentative, at first a question being asked and answered. Then deeper, more certain two people who'd been fighting separate battles, realizing they didn't have to. When they finally pulled apart, Elena's eyes were bright with something other than tears. That was probably a terrible idea. You work for me, we're in the middle of a crisis, the timing couldn't be worse. Or maybe the timing is exactly right, because if we've learned anything from David's obsession, it's that waiting for perfect circumstances means waiting forever. Elena laughed, the sound slightly unsteady but genuine. When did a former Marine sniper become a philosopher? Somewhere between Kandahar and a warehouse job. You pick up perspective in unusual places. She kissed him again briefly, then stepped back to restore the professional distance they'd need to function. Okay, we table this conversation until after David's behind bars and the kids are safe and we're not running on adrenaline and fear. Agreed. But we do have the conversation. Definitely. Marcus's phone buzzed. Text from Mike Auction update. Final sale scheduled for tomorrow night, 10 p.m. David's moving fast. He showed Elena the screen. 22 hours. That's how long we have to prepare the final trap. Then we better get started. They spent the next 2 hours mapping the auction infrastructure, identifying every participant they could trace, coordinating with FBI Cyber Crimes Division on the timing of raids. By 3 a.m., they had a plan. By 4, Marcus was finally driving home to grab a few hours of sleep. His apartment felt empty without Declan. The kids' scattered toys and homework papers that usually cluttered the space were missing, leaving just the skeleton of a life Marcus had built around being a father. He lay down, fully clothed weapon within reach, and closed his eyes. Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by the dream. But this time, when Kareem's voice called adjustments and the IED detonated, the dream shifted. Maria was there, not dying, but standing strong, telling him that moving forward didn't mean forgetting, that building something new didn't betray what came before. He woke at 7, more rested than he'd felt in weeks, and spent the morning preparing for the final operation, equipment checks, contingency planning, verification that all the pieces were positioned exactly where they needed to be. By noon, Declan and Nora were back at Apex, delivered under heavy security and looking tired but excited. They'd spent the night catching fireflies and telling stories, blissfully unaware that their parents had been fighting a war to keep them safe. Declan ran to Marcus' arms, wrapping tight. Dad, we saw a deer. It came right up to the porch. That's great, buddy. Did you remember to do my homework? Yes. Nora helped with the math parts. Nora had attached herself to Elena with similar enthusiasm, chattering about the stars they'd seen, and how Mr. Harrison, one of Marcus's Marine colleagues, had shown them how to identify constellations. For a moment, watching the kids reconnect with their parents, everything felt almost normal, almost safe. Then Marcus caught Elena's eye across the conference room, and the unspoken communication passed between them. This is what we're protecting. This is why we can't fail. The afternoon was spent keeping the kids occupied while adults made final preparations. At 6 p.m., Mike arrived with the FBI liaison, a stern woman named Agent Brooks, who looked like she'd forgotten how to smile decades ago. Mr. Cole, Mrs. Sterling, we're prepared to coordinate the raid once the auction completes. We'll hit every identified buyer simultaneously, roll up the entire network. Marcus nodded. David will have contingencies. Escape routes, burn protocols, dead man switches. We need to move fast and comprehensive. We're aware. What's your role in this operation? Observation. If David shows himself physically, we grab him. Otherwise, we let the digital evidence speak for itself. Agent Brooks studied him with cop eyes that had seen too much deception. You were Force Recon. Classified mission, sealed record. What exactly did you do in service? What was necessary? That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. I'm a civilian consultant now. My past is irrelevant. Agent Brooks didn't look satisfied, but she let it drop. They spent the next hour coordinating with her team, ensuring everyone understood their roles and triggers. By 8 p.m., the waiting had taken on a physical weight. Elena paced her office. Marcus monitored security feeds. The kids had been taken back to the secure location upstate under even heavier guard. Everything was positioned. At 9:30, the auction site went live with final bidding. The price climbed rapidly, 60 million, 70 million, 85 million. Buyers from 14 countries, all thinking they were purchasing cutting-edge encryption technology. Agent Brooks' team traced every transaction, identified every bidder, coordinated with international law enforcement for simultaneous raids. At 10 p.m., the auction closed. Final price $97 million, split among 6 buyers. Agent Brooks gave the signal. Across 4 continents, law enforcement moved simultaneously. The buyers were arrested, their networks infiltrated, their communications intercepted. The global operation David had spent months building collapsed in under 15 minutes. Marcus watched it happen on multiple screens, feeling something like satisfaction settling into his chest. Not quite victory, not while David himself remained free, but close enough. Then his phone rang. David's number. "You're watching, aren't you?" "Seeing your network burn." David's laugh was bitter. "Watching, you think you won. But you're missing the actual play, Mr. Cole. While you focused on the auction, while you positioned all your pieces around buyers and data, you forgot the most important rule." Ice crystallized in Marcus's veins. "What rule?" "That I'm not the only one who wants Elena to suffer. I'm just the one who was willing to pay for the pleasure." The call ended. Marcus's mind raced through implications. If David wasn't working alone, if there was another player. His phone buzzed again. Text from his Marine colleague, upstate perimeter breach. Multiple hostiles, engaging now. Marcus was already running, shouting at Mike to mobilize teams, Elena right behind him despite his protests. They hit the garage at a sprint, piled into the truck tires, screaming as Marcus pushed the vehicle past any reasonable speed. The drive that should have taken 30 minutes took 17. Marcus called his colleague, continuously getting only combat sounds in response, gunfire, shouting, tactical communications. When they finally reached the property, police and FBI were already converging. The house was dark except for flashlight beams cutting through windows. Marcus's Marines had established defensive positions, holding off 4 hostiles who'd attempted to breach the home. But Declan and Nora were safe. Shaken, crying, but physically unharmed. Marcus pulled his son against his chest, feeling the boy's heartbeat rapid against his own. "I've got you. You're safe now. I've got you." Elena held Nora with the same desperate relief, whispering reassurances that everything was okay. Mommy was here. Nothing bad would happen. Agent Brooks approached, weapons still drawn. "The hostiles are in custody. Former military contractors, same Argent Strategic Services that's been involved throughout. We're tracing their communications now. Marcus stood, keeping Declan close. They weren't here to kidnap the kids. This was a message. David showing that he could reach them even with our best security, proving that Elena's not safe anywhere. Where is David Cross now? If he's smart, already out of the country. If he's arrogant, still in the city watching to see how we react. Elena's voice was steel over fury. Find him. I don't care what it takes. Use every resource we have. I want David Cross in custody or in the ground. The next 6 hours were spent coordinating with multiple law enforcement agencies. The hostiles weren't talking, but their equipment told stories. Military-grade communications detailed maps of the property, timing that suggested inside knowledge of security rotations. David had planned the attack specifically to happen while everyone focused on the auction. Maximum impact, minimum risk. By dawn, Marcus had a partial picture. David had left the country hours before the auction, used a private jet to Mexico, then disappeared into a network of connections built over years of international business dealings. Elena stood on the porch of her sister's house, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of red and gold. He won. Not the way he wanted, but he still won. Made me feel unsafe, vulnerable, exactly like he intended. Marcus joined her close enough that their shoulders touched. He's running. That's not winning. That's admitting defeat and hoping you don't have the resources to follow. FBI's coordinating with international authorities. Interpol's issued a warrant. Mexico's extradition treaties are solid. It's just a matter of time. And while we wait for time to do its work, while David hides overseas and plans his next move, Marcus turned to face her directly. We rebuild, strengthen security, eliminate vulnerabilities, make sure he can't touch you or Nora or Declan again. And we live. Really live, not just survive. Elena's hand found his. Together. Yeah, together. Behind them, through the house windows, they could see Declan and Nora asleep on the couch, tangled together like puppies. Two kids who'd been through trauma but would survive it because the adults in their lives refused to break. Marcus thought about the wooden box in his apartment. About Kareem's voice calling adjustments, about Maria's final request to give Declan a normal life. He'd been trying to honor that by hiding, by making himself invisible. But maybe honoring Maria meant something different. Maybe it meant being visible to the people who mattered, using the skills that scared him in service of protecting what couldn't be replaced. The invisible man was gone. In his place stood Marcus Cole, father, protector, partner. Not perfect, not undamaged, but present and fighting. 3 weeks later, David Cross was arrested in Costa Rica, attempting to board a flight to Indonesia. Extradited to the United States, charged with corporate espionage conspiracy to commit theft of classified technology and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. The trial would take months. The legal maneuvering would be exhausting. But David was contained, his network dismantled, his threat neutralized. Marcus stood in Apex's lobby watching Declan and Nora work on a science project together. The kids had processed the trauma differently. Declan with nightmares and hypervigilance, Nora with clinginess and anxiety. But both were healing. Together. Elena emerged from the elevator, noticed him watching the kids, and moved to stand beside him. What are you thinking about? About how 3 months ago I was stacking boxes in a warehouse and trying to convince myself that was enough? That being invisible was the same as being safe. And now I know better. Safety isn't about hiding. It's about having people worth standing with and knowing they'll stand with you. Elena's hand slipped into his fingers, intertwining with comfortable familiarity. So no regrets. About leaving the warehouse, about getting pulled into my corporate nightmare. Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, seeing not just the CEO or the mother, but the woman who'd chosen strength over surrender, who'd trusted him with her daughter's life and her own vulnerability. No regrets, just gratitude that someone gave me a reason to stop hiding. That someone being me, that someone being a 7-year-old girl in a yellow dress who needed help. You just happened to come with her. Elena laughed, the sound bright and genuine. So I'm just a bonus prize. The best kind of bonus, Declan's voice called from across the lobby. Dad, come see. We made the volcano actually work this time. Marcus squeezed Elena's hand once and released it, moving toward his son with the kind of peace he'd forgotten he could feel. Behind him, Elena watched with an expression that suggested she felt it too. The possibility of futures that didn't involve fear of families built from choice, rather than biology of home being wherever the people you loved were standing. The invisible man had become visible, and in that visibility had found something worth more than all the camouflage and caution combined: connection, purpose, and the quiet certainty that tomorrow would be worth waking up for.